Welcome back to another episode of these people who can't get their video to stop lagging, but we still eat meat and can't stop talking about it. And this is Tom and Janice here to talk about all things carnivore. And so, if you would hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, slap a lamb chop on it, as Justin would say if he was here, but he's not.
Oh,
So, I think Janice would dump a bowl of chili on it personally. So, what have you been up to, Janice?
well, I just ate a giant pot of chili. You got me on this whole chili thing now. Now I'm like you. You've already influenced me. You eat chili like every day. Now I eat chili every day.
Well, that's the thing. When people start talking, they definitely start influencing each other, right?
Yeah, and now I want to make those little egg bites that you made.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to those. I was buying them and paying a lot of money for them, and I was like, it can't be that hard to make them, especially like I made 2 dozen at a time. That's a good supply. That's like a week, easy. So I was like, let me give it a whirl. I maybe change up the seasoning a little bit, but they came out good.
That sounds so good. I feel like what we were talking about how when you like certain foods, like you eat more. I'm a little worried because usually I eat real simple carnivore, but I feel like the tastier it is, like the more I eat,
Yeah, for sure.
Like now that I added spices into my chili, I'm like, oh, I'll just eat the whole pot. But like, if it was just like sort of plain ground beef. I don't know. I probably would still eat it, but like I feel like you can't eat as much of stuff if it doesn't taste as good.
Sure. So
So
what'd you put in your chili?
I put as Joe would say, I put my cayenne pepper. And I put some kind of like Mexican fiesta chili seasoning. I don't know. It has a few things in it. And then I put just tomato sauce and I put my Santa Maria style seasoning, which is kind of like
Mm,
salt. It has just like some mild spices. I don't know exactly what. And then I
mhm,
put Redmond real salt, and that was it. But then after I grated a little bit of Tillamook extra sharp cheddar, and I put like a little dollop of sour cream, and then I
mhm,
put little chili lime Cholula on it. So that's why it
mm.
tastes so good. And I always eat it in 3 servings, but I end up eating the whole pot like in one sitting.
Well, how much did you make?
Just the pack, like
Oh,
a
one
square,
pound pack. Yeah.
yeah, of the but it's the Wagyu ground beef, which is kind of
Mm,
cool because when you eat the chili, you know how when you eat the rendered fat, sometimes it makes you feel kind of sick, but with
mhm,
with sauce, like I don't notice the oil, so I cook it in the pot and I don't drain the fat out. I just eat it
mhm,
with all the fat in it. But with that extra like tomato sauce, it kind of like masks that sort of like like that heavy oil taste or
mhm.
taste. So it's really good. Is that like your chili? Well, you say you add more meats, right? Don't you add like additional?
Yeah, so I buy like a 4 or 5 pound package of ground. It's usually ground chuck, something like that. It's like a 80/20.
Mhm.
Um, and they grind it there at the store, so like it's not like an exact amount. It's usually 4.2 to probably 4.6 pounds on average. And then but I put tomato sauce in there too. So Joe was telling me take the tomato sauce, cook it down a little bit,
Mm.
and I add the diced green chilies and the cayenne pepper to it. Sometimes I salt it and sometimes I don't. This time I had a bunch of hot dogs that I bought and they were too salty. So I boiled them and then I grilled them in a pan or fried them in a pan a little bit and chopped them up and threw them in. And I didn't put any cheese or cream cheese in, but I've tried that. That's nice. The cream cheese, of course, makes it a little real creamy.
Interesting cream cheese. Huh?
I think I put a little cumin in there. I like a little ground mustard seed, and I think I put celery salt in.
You're just
Yeah.
so fancy.
Well, people just pass around ideas, and of course, I get tons of them from Joe.
Yeah, it's
Um,
good for that. Like,
they don't have chili like we do there in Australia. It's not like you couldn't get it if you wanted to, but it's not like a big deal like it is here. Like you can get chili a lot of places here. And I took him to the Hat, which is this chain that's in Southern California. They're known for their pastrami, but they have amazing chili too. And so I would go in there and order like 2 beef patties with pastrami and chili and grated cheese. And Joe got that and it just blew his mind because it's like a 2 pound bag of food. Like it's more chili and pastrami than you can imagine, right?
That's what you guys are always talking about, the hat. I'm always like, what's the hat?
You got to come down and try it out.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I'm not a huge pastrami fan, but I guess maybe as a carnivore, I would like it. And with chili.
It's great with chili.
The funny thing is like, if you think back to, I always liked chili as a kid, right? I would eat like the Hormel chili out of a can.
It
gives you like the worst gas because it's got the beans in it, right? But when you take the beans out, like, I don't get gas at all from chili. It's just like weird that it's not the whole thing. It's just the beans that gives you the gas, right?
Yep. Yes. I mean, sometimes if I add dairy, like, oh, you know what it will do for me is like if I get like a sugar-free ice cream or something like that. Maybe if I put a lot of dairy in the chili, maybe I'd get some gas. But if you don't, there's none.
Yeah. So good.
And you could scoop it with pork rinds too. Dip in your pork rinds into the chili. It's pretty nice.
We should have a chili cook-off.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a little bit, I'm still testing it because, like I said, I've been eating it. Like, I get hooked on stuff and I just keep eating the same stuff for a while. Like I was making before for like several weeks, I was cutting up or just kind of like doing like sauteed, I don't even know if you saute it, but like New York strip, like cutting it up into chunks like carne asada. And then I would put sour cream, chili lime cholula, and then I would put just a little cilantro just to give it a little like, a little flair. And I did that like every single day for like weeks. I just kept eating it, But I wonder, I mean, in a way it's kind of good because you can test stuff. Like I'm wondering whether I'm going to start having issues because the tomato sauce,
Only time will tell.
Yeah, and I'm just like, in a way I know myself, I'll just kind of like probably go through the phase and then I'll like cycle out of it and just start eating like, whatever. Like I was eating like my little Wagyu slider, like plain, like every day for lunch for like several weeks. And then, you just kind of cycle through.
Mm-hmm.
You said you you put sausage in your little egg bites. So I made, couple days in a row, I made just like scrambled eggs with like breakfast sausage, like cut up into it, and then I air fried bacon and like laid it on top like a scrambled egg, like a scramble with sausage, and then with like bacon on top. I don't know why it just looked good like that. But
well, when I started the base for my last batch of chili, I put the tomato sauce in the slow cooker crock pot, get it hot, throw in the chilies and the seasoning, and then I stirred in chopped bacon into the tomato, and I put a couple of big strips on top, and cooked that down, and then I added the meat. And not too long ago I bought a bunch of, I don't know how many roasts I bought. They had ribeye roast, choice ribeye roasts on sale for like $5.99 a pound. So I made some chili out of ribeye and it was pretty amazing.
So good. Like
I buy the roast and then I cut the meat off the bone, and then I take the rib bones and I put them in the slow cooker and just cook them as ribs. And then I usually eat the rest of steak, but I had a lot of steak, so I cut some of the steak up and made chili out of it. So
it's just like in chunks then in the chili?
Yeah, chunks of ribeye in the chili. Yeah.
That's some gourmet chili.
It is. So.
Well, yeah, I was listening to what's his name? Dr.
Chafee.
Chafee. And he was being interviewed by some other like health podcast guy. They were talking about like keto and carnivore, and they were talking about carnivore just as like a short term, like a healing solution, like, for several months if you have like autoimmune or you have any kind of like insulin type issues. And I'm thinking, I don't know, like when people say, oh, I can't keep going, like they feel great and they're like doing it for a few months and then they're like, oh, they're just going to stop. Because the question to Dr. Chafee was like, well, would you like, would you just use it as a temporary healing, like heal the gut and then just go back to eating regular? But it doesn't make sense to me. Like, if you heal yourself and you feel way better, why would you go back to eating all the other stuff, you know?
Yeah, that comes up, and I had the same question. It's like, why would you go back? I mean, are you just desperate for variety? Or you just got to satisfy your sweet tooth? What is it? Because at the end of the day, I mean, cooking food in general is just making it taste like something other than what it is. And when you can just sit down and enjoy something as basic as a steak,
Yeah,
you know, you know,
totally.
which is what we do the bulk of the time, right?
Yeah.
So,
When he was saying his main staple is like ribeye, and I agree. Like sometimes I think when I'm eating all this stuff just for taste, I do feel like even just eating all those eggs and bacon and sausage, like I know I probably would feel better that day if I just like ate a ribeye, you know? Like I probably would perform better and feel like my best. But it's just like that thing of wanting a little bit of variety, you know,
mhm.
a little bit of interest in life. And I don't know. Have you ever done like have you ever tried just doing like red meat or whatever for an extended period of time?
Yep. It wasn't really till more recently I started cooking chili. It's kind of the end of last year, and then I realized I love shrimp. I'm just gonna eat shrimp every day. But yeah, it was basically just steak. I did a long experiment where I bought a prime ribeye, then I bought a choice ribeye, then I bought a select ribeye, and
Oh,
they all have various amounts of fat, right?
yeah,
And tried to figure out where I was best. And actually, with the ribeye, probably the select grade I did the best on. But it's not real common. Choice and prime are real easy to find. And to get a good price on it, I'm buying the whole roast, and it's more work breaking down a roast,
yeah,
because I generally cook them without the bone just because I want to cook it, cut it up, put it, unpack it for my lunches for the week.
yeah.
And cooking it on the bone, it just takes longer because it's got to be way cooler before you can cut it up.
Oh, that's true.
And it's messier. If you cut the bone off when it's fresh, it's a piece of cake, it's not dripping everywhere.
Right.
So if you just take it off the bone, and like I said, a lot of times now I take the rib bones and cook them separately. It just is like ribs, right? So
Yeah.
they're just kind of short, but they're really good. So I do that now more, but I mostly have just eaten steak after steak. I eat sirloin and strip loin, or New York strips, a lot, and then I throw some ribeyes in there. You know, so
When it's really true that when you like, you can be really attuned to your hunger if you're just eating steak.
hmm
It you really like at a certain point you're just like, oh, you know, you just get tired of cutting it and chewing it, and you're like, I can't eat anymore. Like you end up not eating the whole thing, right?
hmm
Because it's like first it tastes super good, and then it's like, all right, I'm done eating this, you know?
yeah. When I have leftover steak, I either give it to my dog or I throw it in the chili pot. So yeah.
I think you should have your own chili line or your own chili restaurant.
Well, Justin and I have been talking about coming up with our own bologna, and then
Bologna.
yeah, bologna, the underrated cold cut, and then
Ew, what is bologna? I don't even know what bologna is, but I just know I remember it being gross as a kid.
it's just all the leftovers ground up
Ugh.
and seasoned. It's
But like
great.
what meat?
Well, it can be beef, it can be chicken, it can be pork, or it could be all three.
Oh,
Yeah,
it just looks so gross.
it's
Like
delicious.
you like
I
bologna?
love bologna.
Ugh. I hate how it has that little rind on it too.
But you can get it without that. So,
Ugh.
but we're also going to do something called pemmican prescription. So, pemmican is just dried beef that you basically cut it up, chop it up into like sawdust kind of consistency, and you just mix it with beef fat. And it
Uh-huh.
was a staple in the United States up into World War II. Because when people when settlers moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, they frequently bought it as a provision from Native Americans,
Mm.
um, because it doesn't spoil and it lasts for years, and it's basically a high
Years?
fat. What's that?
Years?
Years. Yeah, yeah. No, they found caches of pemmican that was just wrapped in leather for 20
Ugh.
years, and it was still just the way it was.
Ugh.
Yeah, so that's what the carnivore bar is. So if you buy a carnivore bar, they're very expensive.
Oh yeah,
It, it
you
is
go to the
just
bar. Ugh.
well made pemmican, you know.
It just does not sound appetizing at all. And it just
It's
looks
weird because it's like eating
like
a candy bar, but it's not sweet because it's got the consistency of like chocolate.
that's
So
so
when you
creepy.
but it's just salt, beef, and fat. It's mostly fat.
Interesting that it's mostly fat.
Yeah. So this when people started exploring, the first Americans would go out and explore. That was their favorite provision. It was if you read that book, Fat of the Land by Wilhelm Stephenson, he goes into exhaustive detail about pemmican and its importance and stuff like that. And you realize that it was the choice food, and then when the U.S. military started buying it, then nutritionists got involved. They started adding all kinds of dried fruit and coconut and weird stuff to it. So
Is
yeah,
it, is it true that I thought I heard that Native Americans like were super tall? Is that true?
some of them were, and some of them are short. So it just depended on where they probably depended a lot on their food supply and um, probably somewhat on genetics.
Mm. But like, do you think if they ate more meat, that they would be taller? Probably, right?
Probably, yeah,
I was
probably.
today. I was in my yoga workshop, and I was looking at all the people, right? Because like a lot of the area where like around Santa Cruz, Los Gatos, in this area, it's like a lot of old hippies, right? Like there's just a lot of like old white hippie people, and uh, and I was just looking around thinking, a lot of these people are probably vegetarian,
Hmm.
like because when people go to India or whatever, and they go to the ashram or whatever, they eat all plants, right?
Right.
And I was looking at them and thinking, they, I mean, mindfulness can only go so far, to like, but I feel like just having been a vegetarian for 10 years and now being carnivore, like I feel entirely different. Like this is the first like sort of meditation mindfulness workshop I've done since since being carnivore. I did a lot of that in my like 20s and 30s. And I remember like I went to this place called Spirit Rock. It's like up in like kind of like northern Marin, and it's like all the like they literally, it's a silent place, so you meditate and then you eat all vegetarian food. And I just remember I was like, even as a vegetarian, I was hungry, right? Because you're just eating these little like simple like plant meals. And I remember they had like hard boiled eggs, and I was just like trying to eat as many as I could because I was just sort of stuck in this retreat center,
Mm.
so hungry. And I was thinking like, when I used to do these longer retreats, it would feel like like an eternity, because you're always like at some place where they're feeding you plants. And then today I had eaten that huge meal of like I had 3 eggs, like 4 breakfast sausage, and then I had like a quarter pack of bacon before, and my buttered coffee before going, and I felt like so good. Like during the class, I felt like just how like they're always trying to get you to be like calm and patient and centered and focused so that you're not like, I remember thinking that the time always felt like forever as a vegetarian. Like your mind is just like racing, and I couldn't stay in the present because I was like, I think it was literally because I was hungry, and that creates a feeling of anxiety and like a lack of groundedness. And so anyway, I'm just looking around the room today thinking that probably everyone in that room is either a vegetarian or they eat primarily plant based, even if they eat meat. And I was just thinking, I felt bad for them because I was like, if I was doing this retreat, 15 years ago, I would have been totally miserable.
Mhm.
They're just suffering and like just counting the minutes because I would be like like I used to just think about food all the time. Like, what am I going to eat next? What am I going to eat next? What am I going to eat next? And then trying to fight the hunger of wanting to like eat something really bad because I was felt so hungry, you know. And this time I was thinking about my chili. I was like, "Oh, I got to go home. I'm gonna make my Wagyu ground beef chili," but it wasn't the same. It was more just like an excitement that was like in the future, you know, versus like a desperate, empty. Because I feel like there's something psychological about that inability to feel satiety, you know, like you don't feel when you never feel like you're properly fed, like
Right.
it creates this anxiety, like almost this like chronic like survival, like fighting with yourself feeling, you know, because you're like wanting to eat things that to to feel like you're fed, to feel like you ate fat. You know, I'd be fighting with myself, like trying not to go buy a bag of potato chips and eat the whole bag, you know. But I'd do
Mhm.
it all day, every day, all night until I was asleep. And sometimes I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh, I'm hungry. Anyway, I don't know why I'm going off on that, but I was just thinking about the relationship of like working out and like doing things for your body and your mind. It's all like tied into your fuel, you know?
Mhm.
So
For sure.
like if you were not eating all this meat, would you even have the motivation and the strength to go to the gym like every day and do what you're doing?
Yeah, I doubt I'd have as much energy. I probably wouldn't go every day. Um, so back before, you know, well before carnivore and keto and all that, I was trying all this, trying to eat healthier and stuff like that. And I had terrible arthritis. My sleep quality was really poor. And, I was just in pain all the time. And, my anxiety was really high. Um, and it was harder to concentrate on things for sure, so I've never been to like you said it's a yoga, what'd you call it, a
Like mindfulness too.
my yeah, but you're going to like a special class, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I can imagine how difficult it'd be. I mean, being, even when I was a kid, it was like, being in school, we ate cereal and toast and orange juice for breakfast, and then went to class and had a sugar crash. I mean, think about how horrible that was, right? And
Really.
before I got on the right diet, I go to the gym, and I would be taking protein shakes, probably a cup of coffee, pre workout, and you're trying to work out, and the stomach's just killing me. You know, energy's not there most of the time, moving around, trying to do it, basically at that point it's a lot of products, that they're supposed to help your workout, and it was never as good as it is now on carnivore, you know.
Yeah. I definitely think like this is like the first time really like that I don't know, because there was the pandemic in between, right? I guess
Hmm.
I was carnivore since like mid 2019, and then the pandemic was already the end of 2019, right? Wasn't it?
Wasn't it 2020?
Well, that's why it's called COVID-19, right? Because it started at the end, and then it was full steam by 2020. Like the first part. You're right. You're right. Like it didn't get really going until March of 2020.
I was under the impression it's called COVID-19 just because it's SARS-19.
Oh, I thought that maybe you're right, but I do remember that. I remember. I think it was like March of 2020 that we went into like lockdown or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
But I just think to myself, like I hadn't really had the experience of really like going to the gym and like wanting to work out since being a carnivore, right? Because all of that, the pandemic happened in
Right.
between. And so it's
Well,
like a totally new thing to be like, you know,
I was carnivore for a bit before I went back to the gym, and I realized, well, I quit going to the gym because arthritis primarily was so bad. Like I couldn't lift anymore, sciatica, feet hurt, hands hurt, neck would go out, back hurt.
wow.
And so I stopped going. I don't, I was eating like I wasn't. I was eating a lot of plants. I was eating rice and spinach and kale and you know chicken breast, sometimes lean beef and stuff like that. But I was eating fruit every day and all
Wow.
that, and I was just getting sicker and sicker. And the arthritis got so bad, it's like I just couldn't work out anymore. I was worried I was gonna be able to hold down a job. It was so bad.
That's
So I mean, I don't know if you may or may not have heard this story before, but like the psoriasis got so bad, like I'd get ready for work and like my girlfriend would be like, "Oh, you got to change clothes because you're bleeding through your clothes all over
oh
the
my
place."
god.
Yeah. So, it was bad. And then um when carnivore and the pain went away, everything started healing up, the anxiety's tapering off, and the mind is sharper. And then I was like, man, I got to get back in the gym. So I found a gym near my old job that was within walking distance. I used to go work out at lunch all the time or go afterward. And I was smashing PRs from before. And I took like 8 years off the gym or something like that, out of the gym. And so I went back in and I was lifting more uh, than I had when I was 8 years younger.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was,
Did have a comparison. That's
yeah.
crazy.
And I was really enjoying it. I wasn't like dreading it. And part of that was like I really missed it, but the other part was like the recovery is so fast. Like a lot of times you do a hard workout, even if you've been working out for a while, and then your muscles are really sore the next day or 2 days after. Like you don't want to use them. you know. And of course, I had a lot of joint pain, and that didn't happen anymore. I get some soreness, but it's very mild compared
Oh,
to.
you're right. I just realized that because even just doing stuff like yoga, I remember I'd be sore for like days. And like the past couple weekends, I've been going like back to back, like one or two things a day. And I don't really have anything. Not that I'm doing anything hardcore, but usually like anything where you're stretching or using stuff, like I would be like really sore after.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. And I'm also, maybe it's just the mindset too, but I'm expecting to be able to make gains faster. Like I feel like I should be able to do more quicker, and like you're saying, not have as much recovery time. Like
hmm
not. So I guess we'll see.
There's been days when I went and lifted and then felt like I left too much on the table, and I went back to the gym later and repeated. Yeah,
Oh my god,
and did and was able to lift just as much as I did earlier that day.
no way.
Now I don't work out the same muscle groups day after day. I try and give every muscle group at least a couple days to recover, but sometimes it's even more than a couple days from group to group. But when you lift every day, you don't have to kill yourself. I was at the gym today, and there's people that just work out on the weekends, and they're doing everything on Saturday or Sunday afternoon, everything in the gym in one day. You know,
Whoa.
and they only do it once a week, maybe twice a week. I'm sure you're doing it on Sunday. You go to work the next day, you're probably a little wiped out, right?
So you think it is better to like break, like to work out consistently, but over multiple days, not just like one day a week.
Well, I kind of worked it out for me because most people tell you don't work out every day, period, right?
Hmm.
But I notice when I work out, I concentrate better at work and I sleep better. And if I work out every day, those are the first benefits. And then the next thing was it let me break everything up, especially lifting into very small muscle groups, right?
Mhm.
And just focus on them, go in there. And I mean, it will be work out for like, half hour, 45 minutes. If I really into it, maybe an hour, hour and a half, but that's not that often. And then go back the next day, hit another muscle group, and I'm fresh as a daisy, just no problem whatsoever. So, I mean, the next day I do a big leg workout the next day. Like I'll be sitting in traffic for an hour, hour and a half. I get out of the car, I'm a little stiff, I could tell.
Yeah.
And there might be a little soreness or whatever, but the rest of me is ready to go, So then, I'll do biceps and triceps or shoulders or back or something like that. And then I have big lift days where I do, deadlifts and squats and stuff like that with a lot of weight, which takes a lot more out of you because you're using a lot more muscles at one time. I mean, if you're gonna do a big squat, like, twice your body weight or something more than that, then you're using everything. You're using all your legs, your hips, your torso, your shoulders, your back, everything. Your arms are really surprised how hard it is on your arms, even though you're just holding onto the bar on your shoulders. So,
I can't imagine doing any of those things.
well, you just start out, and it's like, most people, whatever their starting weight is that they work out at, most people work out at like, say, 80% of what the maximum they could lift. If you stick with it for a couple of years, you should be able to double that, triple that, maybe. Getting past that is tough for most people, but if you just stick with it, if you enjoy doing it and you do it for years, you can probably do more.
I think I'm gonna keep with my X3. Dr. JP said he was doing his X3, and I'm like, if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me.
Well, that's a great tool. It's very versatile. It's very high quality. The materials on it are excellent.
The only thing is I feel like for the bands, like some of them for me are like, I think it's too big. Like the loop, like for like
shorten it up.
The chest press and then the whatever. Wait, so how could you shorten it?
You would have to tie a knot in the end or something on the ends.
Oh yeah, maybe I should try that.
Or thread it through a different way.
They probably don't sell like a shorter version, huh?
I think they do. And you can buy other bands. There's millions and millions of bands companies. But X3 has other bands for sure.
They do?
Yeah, I'm sure there's
I gotta figure that out.
Because we've talked to, I forgot, I think it was Justin was talking about this. Justin does the X3 bar. I got my friend Aaron. He wanted to get into shape for Demolition Derby. And I was like, well, I know you're not a gym rat. I said, the easiest thing for you is get an X3 bar, and just go through the workouts, and he did it and it helped. And his kids love it. His kids are very athletic. He's got 3 kids. They love the X3 bar.
What's Demolition Derby again? I forget.
That's where you get in a car and smash into other cars.
Yeah. I don't see that they have different.
You can buy other bands, right? Amazon has their own brands.
Oh.
So you can buy it by length and basically width. The wider it is, the more resistance.
Oh.
You could probably walk into any sporting goods store and buy bands
that are already in a circle like that, like a loop.
Yeah. And they have the ones that are like surgical tube that are hollow, and then they have the flat ones. And you probably want the flat ones for the X3 bar, right?
Nice. That's a really good thing because I think that is one of the things just on the chest press one or whatever that one's called, and the one where you push down like that. I feel like it's a little too like big, like
the big black one.
No, just the
the length.
The length, yeah.
Yeah. So just you throw a tape measure on, see how long it is, and get one that's a little shorter.
That's a really good idea because that was one of my barriers. I was thinking like this isn't quite right because it's a little too long,
Yeah, because I use bands sometimes, especially like on the Smith machine or the leg press or whatever. You can put the weights on and then you can hook bands on so it progressively loads as you extend at the gym. Because they have bands at the gym too, and you just go grab them off a rack, throw them on the machine.
Oh. I still haven't gone into the area of the gym that has all the weights and stuff. I just look over there. But I'm supposed to meet on Wednesday. I'm meeting with some sort of I don't know, some consultant or something. And I'm doing my, not the DEXA scan, but the other thing, something like the scan.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a fitness consultation on Wednesday. So we'll see what comes out of my fitness consultation.
Hi, Margie. Margie's here.
Margie, how do you see the people? I only see the chat. But nothing.
Yeah, she just popped up in the chat.
Oh, there we go. I see.
Yeah.
Hello. That's
She's up late. She's in Miami, so it's like pushing 11 o'clock there. It's 10:45 there.
That's super late. I was
She's a gym rat too. She lifts.
lots of these gym rats. I just like at the stage of just walking into the gym.
Hey, when I got started, I was intimidated too. You walk in there and see all these people that look like they know what they're doing, and then you know, um,
A 4-band set.
hey, Raymond's here. Hey,
Who
Raymond.
offers a 4-band set on Amazon or on X3? Let's see. I'm looking at the X3 site and I already have all that stuff. But I think I should just buy it on Amazon, like you're saying.
Sure. Yeah, go for it. I went during the pandemic. I almost bought the X3 bar, but I had already had bands and steel and everything laying around. So I made a bar that's bigger. 'Cause that was the one thing that I kind of wish. I wish the X3 bar was a little wider because
Oh
I have a
yeah.
wide grip. So I built a bar, and Justin tried it. He was trying to do overhead press with it, and he's like, "I can't lift this. I feel like a child."
Let's
So
see if I look up X3 bands on Amazon, maybe it'll come up with some
if
difference.
I didn't already have a modest amount of weights and bands and stuff at home, I would have bought the X3 for sure.
It's pretty cool. Like the only thing I definitely don't do well is like the one where you're like the kind of like deadlift one where you
Hmm.
like bend over, and then the one where you pull back. You know this one where you like pull.
Oh, okay.
You're like leaning over and you pull your arms back like that to bring your. I don't know any of my anatomy. Whatever they call it, the traps.
Uh
What is
huh.
it,
The
traps?
back, yeah.
Bringing your like shoulder blades together. You're like
Hmm.
that one's really hard. Like I feel like with X,
Dorsi.
my low back, like I'm doing something wrong that I like. There's certain ones that my low back hurts. You know.
It could be the psoas. Psoas tends to get overworked. It's the lower part there. It's kind of the hinge muscle between your hips and your back.
Yeah, my psoas is tight.
Yeah. So you're loosening up the psoas is important. Runners suffer from it. Weightlifters suffer from it because it gets overworked, and then it's hard to get it stronger when it's. I've done that because the equivalent to what you were talking about, where you're pulling on the X3 bar is kind of the bent over row
Mhm.
in the weightlifting world. And it's easy when you're doing deadlifts, bent over rows, and even extensions. Do the extensions where you basically are leaning forward and your heels are kind of up against the stop and you're bending down and lifting yourself up.
Mm,
You're basically lifting your body. You're pivoting at the hips, right?
yeah,
Yeah, and it's easy. I'll get that once in a while too, where it's like that lower back feels like really tired or kind of
yeah,
strained. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's tricky. I mean, that's a good
That's
easy
what,
place to get injured.
yeah, I've been having that like, and then I did the cycle class, or while I didn't do the class, I just cycled while the class was going on. But my low back always hurts. You know.
Yeah, you probably want to give it some time and try and keep that. So as some people, use the rollers to keep rolling it out. And there's some of the PT guys they do special um, exercises or massages for the psoas to loosen it up.
That's a good idea too. It's just I don't want to get injured. You know.
No, that's my number one rule. Don't get hurt. Because that's a big setback, right? I mean, sometimes you can't work out. Most of the time, um, you you can work around certain things, right?
Yeah,
But having to work around or not work out is a big negative. So it's good not to get injured.
that's true. Have you ever been out for like besides your hand or whatever? Like, have you ever been out for any large chunk of time due to injury?
Well, the 8 years for arthritis, and then not really. I mean, is when I would do overhead press and I'd bring the bar down. I stopped doing it with the bar because when I'd come down, it would do something to my left forearm. I'd get this strain in the arm when I was trying to put the bar down.
Is it because of your hand? Like your hand?
Maybe.
I mean, it seems
I'm
like
not sure. I never figured it out. So instead of doing overhead press with a bar, I just do it with the cables.
oh,
Right. So I will do lighter weights with the bar, but it's that whole thing of that when you're holding on to one bar with both hands, it really restricts movement.
yeah.
And I think it was trying to slow the bar down because I hate dropping the bar on the floor, and I just hate the noise. I know there's some guys in the gym. I swear to God, they throw the bar at the ground.
Oh, I hate that. And then they're doing something at the gym that I go to where they're like whacking this bag with this with a stick.
Uh-huh.
And it's so loud. You know how like they do the thing
Yeah.
where they smash the ball down on the ground, but they've got this thing where they're just like bang, bang, and I'm just like, oh, can you stop doing that? It's so awful.
Well, I swing a hammer on a tire.
Oh
So
yeah, so we're doing that too. You do that
I've
too?
got like a 4-foot diameter tire, and
What
it's not.
I saw that for the first time today. What is the meaning of that?
It's just like the tire is indestructible, so it's something you could hit with a hammer, or just the act of trying to flip it over. You lift it by the edge and flip
Oh,
it. Yeah, so that is it's a strength building exercise. It's more kind of a little more practical, equivalent to deadlifting, right?
but hitting that thing with a hammer, it's like I saw some guy doing that today. I was like, what on earth is he doing? It's
Yeah,
some
it's a good workout.
it's some kind of strength training of some sort.
Yeah, it's good for endurance.
Oh.
I have a gigantic hammer. I've bought the biggest hammer I could find because I worked through regular sledgehammers pretty quick. And then one night I was out there hammering away, and all of a sudden I realized the head was gone off my hammer, and I didn't know where it went. I was worried it was in the neighbor's yard or something, or on somebody's roof. So I was like, well, I'm shopping for a hammer anyway. So I called around to all the hardware stores. Finally, this one place had like a 25-pound sledgehammer, which is most sledgehammers are like 12 pounds. So I found like a 25-pounder or something like that. And it had been sitting on the shelf for decades. It was clear that nobody wanted a hammer that big, but I had to have it. So I bought it.
You should have someone like, take your whole workout because I want to see like all this crazy stuff that you're doing.
I was at Knott's Berry Farm, Knott's Scary Farm with Joe and Justin, and they had that thing where you take the hammer and you hit
Yeah.
the thing and it rings the bell. And there was all these guys trying, and I'm like, I gotta get in there. And I didn't win the prize, but I definitely had the highest score.
Oh wow, that's
But
cool.
it's just a rubber hammer, so it doesn't hit super hard. But
We should do like a little split screen where we show your workout and we show my workout. Yours is gonna look a little different.
yeah, well, as long as you're having fun and getting healthy, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. But my elbow is still like I definitely am still having like range of motion stuff,
Yeah.
because but now that I'm actually doing stuff, I feel like it's gonna start, loosening up hopefully.
Well, yoga sounds like the perfect thing for that.
Yeah. I mean I think I feel good. I have to that's the thing about the gym is like you can't compare yourself to what other people are doing, because I go in
Nope.
there and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna just do my little thing. I'm gonna do the easy classes, the easy yoga stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What is that word that Raymond just typed?
Mjolnir. He's saying Mjolnir is just the name of Thor's hammer.
Oh.
That's too funny, Raymond. Yeah.
You should dress as Thor for.
I have a picture somewhere of Justin holding the hammer. Funny. He got a couple swings in with it. The thing is like it is dangerous because like if you can't control it, you could hurt yourself easily. So, and the first time you swing on a tire, even with a lighter hammer, you got to be careful because it bounces back, right?
Yeah, I saw this guy hit it just today, like hitting the hammer on that iron. I'm like, who comes up with this?
Well, it's really big in CrossFit. So a lot of people use it for CrossFit to build endurance. So it's sort of more, again, it's a more practical sort of exercise than just lifting weights, right? Because if you got to dig or break up something with a hammer, or drive spikes or whatever you're doing, I mean, or chop wood, that's more similar than just lifting weights.
Oh, I see. I feel like it just looks very asymmetrical though. Like it seems like it would be bad for you somehow, you know?
It is, and it's not symmetrical. And I'll tell you, when you swing a really heavy hammer, sometimes your feet move. Like when you really push into the hammer and to get it to land really hard, it's hard to keep your footing.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Well, it's that thing of just trying to swing it really fast, and it's pushing back at you. So
Oh
you have to be, and you just wind up using combinations of muscles and movements you wouldn't normally do in the gym.
huh.
So, but it's fun. Start out with a stick or a mace or something, then work up to a hammer. And it's a good. I mean, if you got some aggression to get out, it's a good way to do it.
It doesn't sound fun to me.
No.
Not exactly, no. But I really am curious because I'm I'm curious to see, like these longer carnivores, just like how things change over the years, you know? Because like there aren't that many that we know of, right? That are like 10 plus years.
Well, um, I mean, Lisa's got to be 12, 13 years old. I know Dr. Lisa fairly well. She's she was an early pal, like you and Justin and stuff, and Joe. And she was into it way before I was. And then, there's that whole crowd, Charles Washington, and then the Andersons. And
Amber
then
O'Hearn or whatever.
there's a few other people out there. We interviewed another guy. I forgot his name, but I did a video with him. And, and then somebody else recently did a video of the guy who's been carnivore for like 40 years or
Oh
something.
yeah, I watched that guy. The guy who doesn't have any like health insurance and doesn't have
Yeah.
yeah. That was
So there's a few people out there, and then it's really, I think Charles Washington's group that really kicked it off. There was few people out there just kind of doing it. And then that was the first time, like, I think a group came together to do it. If you go to Zero Carbs In, and, of course there was Bear Owsley, he was a roadie for the Grateful Dead. And he died in a car crash in his 80s, and he'd been carnivore for decades and decades and decades.
wow.
One of the legendary stories. Rick, Dad, you are, says Rick. Rick is probably the guy we're trying to think of. I can't remember his name too. But yeah, there are people out there. Lisa's, I think, not to speak out of school, but I think Lisa's older than I am, and she's still doing cartwheels on the beach every day.
Well, I wonder, it's just funny to me that it's like, well, if this is our proper diet, the fact that we have so few examples of people, who've been doing it for like decades, it's kind of weird that it's like we've gotten so far off course. Like the whole planet has gotten so far off course, It's really strange. Oh, so what did I didn't get to watch the video, but you said Dr. Baker mentioned autistic carnivores and you, and it wasn't an interview?
Yeah, he was interviewing a couple, and they have an autistic son. I think he's a late teen, and they got him on a carnivore. He's autistic. I guess that was the important part, and it made a big difference. And he's nonverbal, but he can um, he can use a letterboard, so he can point at letters to
Oh,
spell out words, which is, a lot of autistic kids, that's the only way they can really communicate. So, but he wanted to just, he realized it was making a huge difference for him. Um,
mm,
and he wanted to just like he get gradually more and more disciplined about it and change his food. So that was the gist of the um the interview, and then it probably at least halfway through, maybe more than halfway
oh.
through.
Did you see that? He mentioned you on the webcast this morning.
Oh, no kidding.
He's mentioning you a lot.
Wow. Well, thanks, Sean. That's nice. Yeah, I used to collaborate a little bit with Sean. Um, he did a video interview with me. Ooh, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, kind of in the beginning. I kind of started making videos because they were asking for videos for meatheals.com, which was before MeatRx.
Oh
And so I submitted videos, and the first video I did was very popular, and I did a shorter kind of follow up one. Um, and then like when he was starting MeatRx and stuff, they need somebody to film some stuff. I used to proofread or beta test websites, and various just chores, just helping out. And Sean always gave me good advice, because it's that thing about um you remember when everybody was talking about oxalates, and it was coming out, and what's his name, uh God, anyways, one guy had a really popular video, and a lot of people are doing it. I was like, man, I don't know. I was doing research on oxalates because there's actually some studies that show autistic people have higher levels of oxalates. And I think I asked Sally Norton about it, and she put me in touch with the lady that did the actual research. Like, I was like, and I was like, I was telling Sean, I was like, everybody's talking about oxalates. I feel like I'm just repeating myself and repeating everyone else. And he's like, look, he's like, people are asking me the same questions from day one till now. It's like there's always a new audience coming in with the same questions. He's
yeah,
like, it was helpful stuff like that, and putting myself out there, and
yeah,
um, you know, the Facebook groups, Autistic Carnivores and Meat Mosaic, the YouTube channel. He's like, just keep doing it, just keep putting yourself out there, and just stick with it, whatever you can. So it was a lot of that. And of course, Sean has all kinds of crazy war stories. So, or
Wait,
stories
wait.
from hospitals. And Sean was in
Oh
Afghanistan.
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
He
yeah,
was a
yeah,
doctor in Afghanistan. So,
yeah.
and I got to meet his dad. His dad's gone now.
Oh, you did? You met his dad too?
I just happened to be at Sean's house one day, and his dad was visiting. I think his dad was from Georgia.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it was kind of cool. Got to meet his dad, and I met one of his kids and stuff like that. And we went out, I took me out to dinner one time. It was really nice. I got to go head to head with Sean at a Brazilian barbecue.
How fun.
I ate one more plate of meat just because I wanted to say that I ate one more plate than Sean.
Didn't he move to? Doesn't he live in like Washington or somewhere? I forget.
Yeah, he moved up somewhere, Washington. I know he was kind of near Sonoma-ish for a while, but I think he was waiting for another house to be done or whatever. So I think his girlfriend's work um, was kind of centered up there, so it made sense
Hmm.
to move up there or something like that. So, but his place down here was pretty cool because he had like a horse arena in the backyard.
Aw.
It was horse property, yeah. So it was kind of going to have this big waterfall in the back, and
So
then there's
he
the
lived
horse.
close to you before, right? Pretty close.
What's that?
He lived pretty close to you before.
Yeah, not too far.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe like 20 miles, something like that, 25 miles, something like that. So yeah, so I mean, he was the first kind of carnivore I knew. Everybody goes, well,
I didn't
that's
know.
crazy, but that had more to do, I think, with proximity than anything. We
Yeah.
just kind of live near each other. So, um, and I went to see him at the rowing competition in Long Beach. So
Aw.
I got to film him there, met him there. He won, of course. that was just a room full of giants. Like I mean, some of the people were young, like Olympic athlete age, but they're all tall and just jacked. Everybody in the room. I was like, holy crap. It was all the tall, jacked people from all around the world that don't play basketball. Even the girls were like 6'6".
What? Are you kidding me?
No, it was insane. They were all like Sean's size. Sean is tall. Sean's got to be like, I think,
And the girls are
5 or something.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, yeah, Sean's an impressive specimen. The dude is just fit as hell. He's tall, he's muscular, and he's just when you see him do the 500-meter row. I told him one day I was gonna beat him at the 500-meter row. But when you go balls out on a 500-meter row, you feel like you are gonna die.
Wow.
I mean, like you're just rowing as hard as you can. You can't breathe fast enough.
I cannot believe like just his whole history that he just picked up on this carnivore thing and then like wrote a book on it. It just seems kind of like just kind of random, you know? Like that. I mean, it's good. It's good
Well,
that
you
did,
know, he was an orthopedic surgeon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he did a lot of knee and hip replacements. And he was also an athlete. You know, he competed in rowing, Highland Games. He played rugby, you know, did a lot of stuff. And he was getting heavier there in his 40s, I think, guess it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think he kind of experimented with like low carb and got leaner and was performing better. And he noticed his joint pain was going away. And so he was recommending it to some of his patients. And they were like, oh, yeah, my knee's better. We don't have to replace it anymore, you know?
Right.
And unfortunately, you know, he was amputating a lot of feet and legs from diabetes, right?
That's crazy.
And then so, you know, he was looking at it like, well, you know, nutrition is going to save a lot of suffering. You know, I'm sure he doesn't enjoy amputating people's feet, you know.
Yeah. Oh my god.
So, and he talked about the tissue quality too. Like he noticed that the people, he's like the bone sometimes would be like soft, like cornbread, like you can push your finger into it.
Oh.
And of course, a lot of people were overweight, and he seemed like people didn't recover well a lot of times because overall their tissue quality throughout their body wasn't good. So it's hard to.
You're right. If you're a surgeon, you're actually seeing like the quality of the bones and the tissue, huh? Like when you're open.
So he doubled down, and you know, and it was interesting because in the beginning when I was meeting people like him and even like Zach Bitter, you know, talking to him, I realized these guys are completely reinventing their lives. They're going out on a limb to create a new career doing something else, right? And I was like, man, that is brave, you know. So it's kind of inspired by that too. It's like these guys are facing, you know, much bigger challenges than I do. You know, they have a lot more on the line than I do. So that actually made it easier for me to just stick with the social media, keep interviewing people, keep getting the word out, keep the group going, you know, stuff like that. So,
well, it's kind of cool. Like same thing with I keep talking about it, but Dr. Chafee, like just seeing how he like really ramped up his like, you know, his podcast and trying to get the word out, you know. It's like at a certain point, I think people like these doctors who they wanted to help people, they realize this is the best way they can help people, right?
Right.
To prevent the need for surgery, to prevent the need for like serious intervention, you know.
Well, like Lisa, she's an eye specialist. I think she's an odontologist or something like that. And she's not really allowed to discuss nutrition with her patients, right? But she's treating a lot of people with diabetes and stuff who are having, you know, blindness is a very common outcome for diabetes, just like the amputation from the, you know, they get lesions on their lower extremities that don't heal, you know, infections that don't heal because of the high blood sugar. Their eyes, the blood vessels in their eyes, I think, or something like that goes bad from the high blood sugar. You know, she's seeing this and she's like, she could kind of like say, oh, you might want to check out this or that, read this book or whatever, but she's not really legally allowed to counsel her eye patients on nutrition.
That's so sad that like somebody's gonna like lose their eyesight, but you can't really
Mhm.
tell them.
Right.
I know somebody like that who's diabetic and who has the eye thing, and I'm real tempted to like be like when I see them eating sugar, I'm like you could just do what I do, just eat meat every day, and I bet you
Yeah.
away. And they're really young too, and it's like it's kind of hard to just it's hard to witness that stuff.
Well,
Oh
when you look it up, it's not just blindness and amputations. It's like the leading cause of heart disease.
yeah,
Rick Rodriguez. Thank you, Raymond.
I've never heard that name before.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it's getting late. We should probably wrap this up. I was having a good time talking to you. I could talk to you all night. It's a great conversation. I hope everybody out there is enjoying it. But we'll be back next week, and Jules might be back, and you never know. Dustin might have time to pop in. Jules and Janice, I recorded a couple of short ribs yesterday, and I've got one in the can from last weekend. So I'll have more videos coming out other than just the live stream, more of your favorite cast of carnivore characters. So, but anyways, did you want to mention that book that we were talking about, The Untethered Soul?
Oh, is that appropriate for carnivore?
It's all on the table. And, if people get some help from it, enjoy it or whatever, it's all game.
I love that book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And then I bought he has like an 8-part class called I think it's called like The Untethered Soul Living from a Place of Surrender on Sounds True. And then he has a lot of free stuff on YouTube, but he's really I don't know, I feel like this is the strange thing is that now like I've always been on this sort of like when I was in my 20s, I was doing like yoga and like wanting to be on this spiritual path and I was a vegetarian. And now I feel like I'm in my 40s and I want to be like I still want that like that liberation, right? I want that like freedom from suffering and like the health and all of that. But it's like it goes so well with carnivore. It's just a really weird thing. It's like I feel like it's attainable now because I have
Right.
the mindset and all of like the physical like constitution. Like I feel just like solid. Like yoga is all about yoking and like grounding, like the mind, the body, the spirit, right? But I feel like I didn't feel like I could get to that experience of being like fully human or whatever you want to say, however you want to call it, as a vegetarian. But I feel like I can as a carnivore, which is just so strange. Like it seems like almost like it seems like you should be able to achieve enlightenment regardless of what you're eating, but I don't think
Right.
you
Right. Yeah. Carnivore.
it's like so
Raymond mentioned carnivore zen, right? It's
yeah.
got yeah.
And I just feel like so much happier. Like every day I'm at work, I'm just like I'm very present, I'm focused, I'm clear, and I can see like all the suffering around me, right? Like I can
Right.
see people and I can see like I can be outside of myself because I'm like so grounded and rooted just based on like all of my physiological needs are met, all of my psychological needs are met by my fuel. And it's like
Right.
it enables you to be like have that freedom from suffering, and then you can sort of have more compassion and see other people and help other people because you're kind of free from your own like because I mean you think about how much suffering like psychological, emotional, physical, spiritual, it's all tied together. When your body is like, like when you're in pain, you had like arthritis and you can't think straight. It's like, how can you be compassionate toward other beings if you can't even like stand being in your own body and your own mind? So I think I'm pretty excited about this, like this sort of spiritual path that's available with this diet. Seems weird, but I feel like there's something there.
Yeah. I have an easier time, you know,
Yes, carnivores.
what do you call it? Being compassionate or just having patience with people
Mhm.
than I used to for sure.
yeah, and just resilience and all of it, and like mental clarity is that's what everyone's trying to get right through all this mindfulness and meditation and like calming and everything. And it's like, well, you could just sort of have it, or at least your baseline is way higher with carnivore, and then everything beyond that is just like extra states of exhilaration or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, read The Untethered Soul if you haven't already. I mean, obviously it's a
Yeah.
famous book, but
You mentioned it to me, and I didn't remember the title. But when I saw the cover of the book, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I listened to that one." I don't know how long ago, maybe a year ago. I don't know who. I was probably Emily who recommended it.
yeah.
Maybe Justin. It could have been anybody in a group. But we used to talk about books like that all the time. Amongst ourselves anyway. So we maybe podcast about them. But yeah, it's great. I mean, I found it on Audible. I don't read much because I'm a slow reader. Mentioning Sean, when I realized how much better my dyslexia was, is somebody started a project where we were reading chapters out of Fat of the Land by Wilhelmer Stephenson. So I did some, Sean did some, A Day did some. I'm trying to remember who else, somebody else. And I was like, well, it's going to be really tough for me. I'm about to do it over and over again because I'm dyslexic, I have a hard time reading. And it actually went really well. And Sean was like, "What are you talking about? You did fine." Sean was sending me his video files and I was uploading them. And I was watching Sean. I was like, "Man, I was reading better than Sean that day." And that guy has a mind like a steel trap. I mean, he reads stuff and
Oh,
remembers stuff like constant. It does really good.
yeah. I do feel like on carnivore, you get smarter.
Yeah, we have so much more capacity.
Well, yeah, and your retention is better, and yeah, all of it. It's pretty. I always like. I don't. I hate to say this, but when I'm at work, I just feel like I'm 10 steps ahead of people because I mean, just watching what they're eating throughout the day, right? Like everybody's starting with like their huge cup of coffee. They already look super tired. And then like you watch them like snacking, and there's like everybody's desk has like a candy jar on it. And they're just
Right.
going and like eating these candies all day. And by the end of the day, everyone's like, their heads like laying on their desk practically. And I'm still like buzzing around and I'm thinking, it's just sad. It's sad how people are just really suffering and they're really not operating at full capacity, like mentally, you know?
Well, yeah, and one of the first things I noticed was that um other people are forgetting more because it was like I'm like, didn't we already have this conversation? Didn't we already figure this out? And people didn't remember. So I was like, I remembered that we discussed it and worked out a solution. This is usually at work, and I realized, holy crap, I'm remembering all kinds of stuff that everybody else is forgetting.
Yes, that's so true. They forget, and then I don't know. I also feel like I'm able to listen better, like in meetings. Like I'm always the note taker and capturing all the action items. And I
Mm.
just, but I'm like, while I'm doing it, I'm always just like looking at people's faces. They all just look so tired and so miserable, and I feel so bad. I want to just be like, here, eat a steak. You'll feel better. But we can only do so much, right? You have to keep your podcast going and your.
Yeah. I mean, I'm jealous I mean, Sean hits it hard. He's busy all the time. Bart hits it hard all the time. That's one of we did a recording with Bart. Bart gets out 4 or 5, sometimes 6 videos a week. I'm lucky if I get 2. So, but it's kind of a one man show, and Bart's got a $5,000 computer, and fancy software and PIM. So, but anyways, just keep it going, do what you can, and when I have more time, I'll do more promoting, more editing, more social media.
We should do a chat about like ways to um, nudge people into carnivore without, you know what I mean? It's a really hard thing to like to suggest to get people to like consider it?
Well, we were thinking about all kinds of projects, and I wanted to do my own documentary, and nobody had time. Like I was going to have each person, uh, basically film their answer to a question or tell us their story or whatever, and nobody had time to do it. Everybody kept getting busier. So you got the people like me that are part-time YouTubers, and then you got all the people like Emily and Bart and stuff like that who they're doing social media full time. They have an audience. They oftentimes have paid members and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they just didn't have time to work on the project, and then just busy working people, they never had time to sit down and just participate. So I'm working on my own book is what I'm doing, because that's the solitary project I could work on in my spare time. So
That's great. That's great. Well, you keep me motivated. I got to figure out some things, some ways I can contribute. I don't know what it is yet, but yeah, this is good. So
well, I'm glad you're back.
thank you. Thanks for welcoming.
Timing worked out perfect because there's no Justin right now.
I'm no Justin though.
I don't know.
Maybe I can train with him, and then I can channel him.
You can channel a little Justin.
Justine.
All right, I'll call you. Oh, I used to call him Justine by accident in text all the time. You put that E on the end all the time. And one day he's like, "Why do you do that?" I'm like, "I didn't even know I was doing it." All right, I better break this one off. I promised somebody I would be at their house by 8:30. So, but it was wonderful talking to you. I hope everybody out there enjoyed it. Send the links out to everybody you know, whether you like them or not. Let the Meat Mosaic video channel play for your pets while you're at work. Get us some subscribers and some viewing time. Help us move the channel along. But until next time, eat some meat, feel better, and whatever you do,
don't
fall down the carpal hole. Trying to end the broadcast and it's not responding.